starting in like 2008, 2009, when funding issues were significant, especially in local government. They were cutting staff left and right, and you now had to maximize all your purchases over the next 2 or 3 years, and things started to leapfrog over themselves in terms of the possibilities of technology. So it's a very interesting time, and did that for quite a while, and happened to have this guy named AV come in on a shortlist presentation for an IT strategic plan, and he did a pretty good job, and we actually hired him. And so that's how AV, our CEO, and I knew each other. So, um, many years later, he gives me a call and he says, "Do you want to come do this?" And it's yeah. I saw the vision of I finally could be the consultant I was always looking for when I was on the other side of the table. It's the way I describe it. My heart still is very much in local government. Now I get to serve 25, 30 local and state government entities across the board. So what drives me and gets me excited about all this, I still get to be involved in, but from this side of the table, and in a way that I can help my clients more by, again, being the consultant that I was always trying to look for when I was putting out RFPs and interviewing vendors.
I love that. And our founder and CEO, Mr. Abhijit Verekar, can be very, very persuasive. So I get it, but I love that story, and I think it, makes a real impact that you have lived it, right? And now you're on the other side of the table. So thank you for sharing that, Robert. And I think this is a good segue into my next question, in which, a lot of public agencies, they partner with vendors, and that partnership becomes more transactional instead of relationship based. So how do you turn a transactional relationship into more of one that adds long-term value?
It's the same thing. You'll hear me repeat myself from other times we've discussed this topic, but it really is, it's trust. And it really comes down to shared fate. If
It does.
transactional means there's certain rules, and there's also areas, and it also implies limitation of liability by both parties. So everything's very strictly defined. It's within a narrow framework, not just because that's what people love to do. It's because I'm trying to control liability in dealing with this person. If I reach out to this vendor and I ask this, they're going to smell change order, and I'm going to suddenly get a sales presentation from them. And all I literally wanted to do was ask a question and get some clarity.
Mm-hmm.
When you remove those barriers and it's a trusting relationship and they know that you're in it with them, all those walls come down and honest conversations could be had. Rather than spending 5 minutes trying to set up and frame the meeting, give me a call, answer the phone. You tell me exactly what you're looking for. Hey, I was just thinking about this. Can you give me some insight on that? And then that way, that it really is a trusting collaboration, and that neither party suddenly thinks about, oh, if I ask this question, is it going to cause them to think this? All those sorts of stuff that goes away when you actually have some sort of collaborative relationship, which is why we're big on relationships here at Avero, because unless people are willing to sit down and be honest and look at a situation and be direct about it, it's very difficult to solve issues. It's very difficult to solve challenges. And the unspoken things that a client doesn't want to tell me is a problem, because that's a festering problem that I can't address unless I know about it. So that's why the trust aspect, the communication aspect, the shared fate aspect is just so important with clients. There's just no substitute for really getting down to what the issues are and getting them solved quickly.
I couldn't agree more. Relationship building is so key. And that's what the whole organization has been built on, right? Making sure that we have a seat at the table with our clients, not just on Zoom, but when we go on site, and not just the key stakeholders, right? We talk to everyone in the organization. I think it's just so key to build relationships across the board, ask those hard questions, and make sure that everyone is being heard. And I love that about Avero Advisors. So what is one dead giveaway that maybe a consultant or any vendor is just checking boxes rather than actually being invested in a government agency's success?
Yeah, if you think about calling them or asking a question or going into a meeting, do you have to mentally prepare yourself about exactly what you're going to talk about and how you're going to try and frame that and how you're going to get that done? It really should just be one of the easiest things. You should be able to walk in and sit down to the meeting, and just speak freely and speak what's on your mind and speak directly about it. And if you find yourself going, well, I don't want to tell these guys this because it just might scare them, or there's some hesitation or reservation, or you're trying to think of ways to reword something, that's actually another dead giveaway that your vendor's not building the relationship with you that they should. You should not have to sit there and figure out how to frame something and phrase it perfectly to be able to communicate it to your vendor to know that you're going to get the response you're looking for. You should be able to speak in plain English your concerns, what you're looking for, what the outcome is, what the problem is. If you don't have that and there's something else going on that's causing you to hesitate, then there's a foundational problem with the relationship.
Yeah, I think that a vendor who is looking at the whole picture is one that you want to be in business with, right? Not one that's just delivering the project at hand, right? But one that looks at the organization as a whole and opens your mind up to other problems that may arise during the contracted project. So I think, one that's open-minded and one that's going to ask those hard questions about other things going on in the organization is also key when building relationships with your vendors. I have one more question for you, Robert, and then I'm going to take the questions in the comments. We've got some people commenting here. But if you could tell government leaders one thing to look for in a vendor relationship, what would it be? Something other than what we've already talked about today.
Yeah, I could say honesty, but that can be difficult to see. I think humanness is the biggest takeaway I've had from our last several interactions with potential clients. The last two big projects that we got in December, both clients said the same thing. We selected you guys because you were the most human. You had the qualifications and great presentation and all that, but you actually talked to us like human beings and actually asked and answered questions like you weren't just a prepared robot or a walking sales presentation. And they loved that. And that delights me too, because I don't necessarily go into those presentations with that specifically in mind, but I do like to get to the Q&A piece, especially with clients. Ask me any question, ask my project team any question. And so I really do think that's the key. I think people are looking for just a baseline of who you can trust and who actually understands us. And it comes down to that being human concept. And in contrast, one of the vendors said, yeah, the other three people that presented behind you never laughed, never smiled, never really opened up. It looked like they had just been cookie cuttered and dropped in there. And showed no signs of warmth or any of that stuff. So it makes me excited that it's still things like that that are really palpable, whether you're a large client or a small client. And that's what gets you to initially go, yeah, I think these people can be a partner. I think they can really understand us. And guess what? They're actually going to be kind of fun and interesting along the way too, right? Right. Clients are people too. They like talking to interesting, fun people. So it's funny how it works out to be that. But like I said, the last two big clients we had, very clear that the human aspect was a big deal to them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. Great answer. And I always go back. I've said this 1,000 times on the live stream, but when I first started in business development here at Avero, I thought I needed to be some technical expert, right? To be able to sell our services. And really, it took me about 1.5 years, but I realized, no, I just need to be Megan. Megan is enough. And Megan likes to make friends. And really that's the human element that I think we bring to the table, just like you said. So thank you for sharing that, Robert. I'm going to go to the chat box really quick before we wrap up today.
I was going to say real quick in response,
Yeah,
clients know when you're not being sincere, and it's the same
yes.
thing that we do in my department, which is you're going to have to find a way to do this as you. Don't try and be someone else. Clients know when you're being insincere. A very good point.
They do. Absolutely. So Mick says, let's see, how important are in-person meetings for fostering trust and transparency? Mick is trying to get us on our soapbox here this morning. I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I think they're the most important, Mick. I would rather be on site and in person with anybody. I will, take any flight to go anywhere to come on site to be with you there in person, because there's just so much collaboration that happens in person. There's things you can pick up on, like body language and cues. You can tell if clients are really engaged, and you can pick up on things that may be a hindrance in the project, right? When you're on site, you can't always do that on Zoom. You guys have seen multiple videos of AV and I just ranting about all of the sales presentations that we've had to give on Zoom because everyone's camera is turned off, and it's like we don't know if we're talking to the air, the wall, a person. No one says anything. We can't see their faces, and it's like, what is the point? What is the point if you're not going to try to engage with someone who you're contracting with? What is the point of doing the sales presentation? Robert, I'm going to get off my soapbox and pass it on to you.
No, it's the most critical aspect of being there in person is the conversations that happen before the meeting and the ones that happen right after. And it's impossible to capture that via Zoom. And so it's less about actually being in the meeting in person with someone, although that is vitally important because you're reading body language. You're able to go, yeah, this topic isn't going very well. I either need to get to the point or refine my point or stop here and ask, I don't think I'm getting this across to you. Do you have any questions? All the stuff that's very difficult to read via Zoom. But my experience especially has been it's that pre-meeting conversation and then the one that happens right after when the meeting wraps and everyone stands up and starts walking towards the person they want to ask questions with or talk to. That's where a lot of the real interaction occurs. That's important.
It really does. And if your consultant or your vendor is not engaging with you prior to the sales presentation and after, then that is another, we talked about red flags earlier. That's another red flag because we always make a point to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with us in that room before and after.